When Vanessa, my wife, sat me down last Tuesday night with that serious look on her face, I knew exactly what was coming. Women don't ask for a break to save marriages. They ask for a break to audition potential replacements. But here's the thing about me. I don't panic. I don't beg. I listen. I process. And I make calculated decisions. So when she finished her rehearsed speech about needing space and time to think, I just nodded and said, "Okay, 10 days it is." The look on her face was priceless. She had obviously braced herself for tears, for pleading, for some desperate attempt to make her change her mind. Instead, she got a cold, hard agreement. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out if this was some kind of reverse psychology trick. It wasn't. I was already 3 steps ahead. "You seem surprised," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Isn't this what you wanted?" She stammered something about not expecting me to take it so calmly. Of course she didn't. In her mind, I was supposed to fall apart at the thought of losing her. What she didn't realize is that you can't lose something that already has 1 foot out the door. The next morning, I watched her pack with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning this for weeks. She had everything lined up, where she was staying, what she was taking, even which car she'd drive. This wasn't a spontaneous need for space. This was a calculated move. "I'm staying at my friend's place," she announced, not meeting my eyes, "the one who lives in Brooklyn." I knew exactly which friend she meant, Rebecca, the perpetually single one who'd been filling her head with ideas about living your best life and never settling. The same friend who'd been encouraging her to go out more, dress differently, and question our relationship at every turn. "Makes sense," I replied, not looking up from my coffee. "Close to all the action in Brooklyn." She paused at that comment, suitcase in hand, searching my face for any sign of emotion. But I learned a long time ago that showing weakness to someone who's already looking for the exit only speeds up their departure. As she headed for the door, she turned one last time. "We should probably avoid contact during this time, to really think things through." There it was, the real agenda. She didn't want me calling, didn't want me texting, didn't want any interruptions to whatever she had planned for these 10 days. Most guys would have protested, insisted on daily check-ins, or tried to negotiate the terms. Not me. "Absolutely," I agreed. "Total radio silence. The 10 days start now." She left looking more confused than relieved. I could practically see her texting Rebecca before she even got to the car, probably saying something like, "He took it too well. Something's wrong." The house felt different immediately. Not empty, but liberated. I'd been walking on eggshells for months, trying to fix something that was already broken, trying to win back someone who had mentally checked out long ago. Now I could think clearly. That night, I did what any rational man would do. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of our recent conversations, pictures of the house as she left it, statements from the joint credit cards, and an inventory of our shared assets. If she wanted to play a game, I was going to be ready with the evidence. By day 2, I was settling into a routine that didn't revolve around her moods, her complaints, or her constant need for validation. I worked out, caught up with friends I'd been neglecting, and actually enjoyed having my own space again. But then the social media post came that changed everything. I wasn't stalking her accounts. I'm not that pathetic. But when a mutual friend sent me a screenshot with a text, "Dude, you have to see this," I knew the 10-day break had just turned into something else entirely. There she was. Bright smile, new outfit, arms wrapped around some guy I'd never seen before. The caption read, "Sometimes you need to step away to realize what true happiness looks like. New beginnings. Living my truth." Day 2 of our marriage break, and she was already announcing his replacement. Most men would have been devastated, betrayed, maybe even surprised. Me. I felt something far more dangerous. I felt clarity, a sharp, laser-focused clarity about exactly who I had married and exactly what kind of game she had been playing. She wanted to post about new beginnings. Perfect. I was about to give her a new beginning she would never forget. The screenshot burned on my phone screen like evidence at a crime scene. There was my wife of 4 years, beaming with a happiness I hadn't seen in months, plastered against some tall, dark-haired stranger in what looked like an upscale restaurant in Beverly Hills. Her hand was on his chest, his arm around her waist, both of them looking at the camera like they were announcing their engagement. But it wasn't just the picture that got to me. It was the timestamp, posted 6 hours ago. Day 2 of our supposed time to think, and she was already playing house with someone else. My phone buzzed with another text from the same friend. There's more. She's been posting all day. I went through the evidence methodically. A coffee shop selfie with the mystery man at 9 a.m., shopping bags and holding hands at noon, a romantic dinner at 7 p.m. She documented an entire relationship timeline in less than 24 hours. The comment section was even more revealing. Her single friends cheering her on with fire emojis and, "You deserve this, girl." Her family members, noticeably silent. And then I saw it. A comment from Rebecca. "About time you chose yourself. He seems perfect for you." About time. Perfect for you. This wasn't a rebound. This was a replacement. She'd been holding auditions while she was still wearing my ring. I put the phone down and walked to the kitchen, my mind processing the implications. She hadn't asked for a break to think about our marriage. She had asked for a break to publicly transition from one relationship to another without looking like the cheater she actually was. 10 days wasn't her timeline for reflection. It was her timeline for introducing her new boyfriend to the world while maintaining plausible deniability. "We were on a break," would be her defense when people started asking questions. Smart, calculated, and absolutely ruthless. But here's what she didn't count on. I'm not the kind of guy who gets played without playing back. I opened my laptop and started my own investigation. Social media is a goldmine when people get sloppy with their privacy settings. Within 30 minutes, I had a full profile on Mr. Perfect. His name, Michael, his job, his relationship history, even his address. The internet makes everyone an open book if you know where to look. Turns out, he wasn't exactly the Prince Charming her post suggested. Recently divorced, with a pattern of overlapping relationships that his ex-wife had thoroughly documented in their very public divorce proceedings. My wife had excellent taste. She'd found someone exactly like herself. The more I dug, the clearer the picture became. They had been talking for weeks, maybe months. Those late-night work calls on her phone weren't about work. Those mysterious errands weren't for groceries. Rebecca wasn't just providing a place to stay. She was providing an alibi for an affair. By midnight, I had everything I needed to destroy her carefully crafted narrative. Screenshots, timestamps, even a few social media pictures of him that placed them together before our break officially began. But revenge through exposure felt too easy, too predictable. Instead, I decided to let her dig her own grave. The next morning brought fresh content. Sunrise beach photos from Miami, breakfast for 2, even a picture of them holding hands while walking his dog. Our dog, actually, since I paid for everything when we adopted him. Every post dug her lie deeper. Every caption became more elaborate about her journey of self-discovery. Every comment from her accomplices made them all parties to her deception. But the best part was seeing the reactions from people who actually knew us. Former co-workers, mutual friends, even some of her family members were starting to ask careful questions. The timeline didn't add up and people weren't stupid. By day 3, the house looked like a war room. I had documentation spread across the dining room table, backups on 3 different devices, and a plan that would make her 10-day timeline completely irrelevant. She wanted to control the narrative. Fine. But narratives only work when you control all the characters, and she had forgotten one crucial detail. I still had access to everything. Joint accounts, shared property, and most importantly, the house we'd bought together. The house where all her remaining belongings were stored. The house she would eventually have to return to pick up everything she'd left behind in a rush to start her new life. The house that was about to become the stage for the most public reality check of her life. I started in the bedroom, methodically going through her closet. Designer clothes from Nordstrom she'd bought with our joint credit card. Jewelry I'd given her for birthdays and anniversaries. Photo albums from our wedding that she had obviously forgotten existed. It all went into boxes. Neat, organized, carefully labeled boxes that told the story of a marriage she was trying to erase while pretending it never mattered. But I wasn't packing for storage. I was packing for a public display. Day 4 brought rain, which felt appropriate for what I was about to do. The boxes were stacked neatly in the garage, each one labeled with clinical precision. Designer clothes, personal items, sentimental junk, wedding photos, evidence, everything she would need for her new life, organized better than she'd ever organized it herself. But organization wasn't the point. Public education was. I had spent the night before crafting the perfect social media response, not angry, not bitter, just factual. The kind of post that would make people stop scrolling and start thinking. The kind that would recontextualize every happy picture she'd been sharing. Her latest update showed them at an art gallery in Chelsea, her wearing a dress I'd bought her last Christmas, him playing the part of the cultured boyfriend. The caption was about exploring new perspectives and embracing authenticity. 47 likes and counting from people who had no idea they were celebrating adultery. My phone was buzzing constantly now, friends sending screenshots, asking if I was okay, wondering what was really going on. I answered every message the same way. Thanks for checking in. Everything's fine. The truth has a way of coming out. That sentence became my motto. Not dramatic enough to sound bitter, but loaded enough to plant seeds of doubt. People started asking questions. People started looking closer at her timeline. People started doing their own math. The turning point came when her own cousin, Laura, called me directly. Look, I don't want to get involved, but the dates aren't adding up. She's telling people you guys separated weeks ago, but I saw you two together at dinner last Sunday. Perfect. I didn't have to expose her lies. Her lies were exposing themselves. By Thursday afternoon, I was ready for phase 2. The boxes were loaded into my truck along with a few larger items she'd conveniently forgotten, her stationary bike she'd used twice, that overpriced Italian espresso machine she had insisted we needed, the decorative pillows that had turned our couch into an obstacle course. I drove to Rebecca's apartment building in Brooklyn and parked across the street. Second floor, corner unit, exactly where she'd said she was staying. Her car wasn't there, but Michael's was. A black sedan with a vanity plate that screamed, "Live and lay RG." The building had a nice courtyard, well lit and visible from the street, perfect for what I had in mind. I started methodically unloading, creating a neat exhibit on the sidewalk right outside the building's entrance. Every box perfectly aligned, every item carefully positioned for maximum visual impact. The wedding dress she'd left hanging in our closet went on top of everything, still in its garment bag like a white flag of surrender. But the masterpiece was the sign I'd made. Clean, professional, laminated to survive the weather. It simply said, "Free. Things left behind during a 10-day marriage break. Please take what you need." No accusations, no emotional outbursts, just a clear statement of fact that anyone could interpret however they liked. I was setting down the last box when my phone started ringing. Her number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her panicked voice. "What are you doing? People are calling me, asking why my stuff is on the street. This isn't funny. Call me right now." 3 more calls followed, each more desperate than the last. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I took a picture of the completed display. The boxes, the sign, the wedding dress catching the afternoon light. It looked like an art installation commenting on modern relationships, which, in a way, it was. The post went public at exactly 5 p.m. social media prime time. When someone asks for space to think about your marriage but uses that space to think about someone else, sometimes the best response is to give them all the space they need. New beginnings. Living my truth. I used her own hashtags, her own language, her own timeline against her. The response was immediate and nuclear. Within minutes, friends were commenting, sharing, asking questions. Her family members who had stayed silent on her posts suddenly had a lot to say on mine. Former coworkers who knew our real timeline started filling in the blanks for anyone confused about the dates. But the best part was watching her damage control attempts in real time. She started deleting comments on her own posts, changing the captions, even taking down some pictures entirely. Too late. Screenshots live forever. People had already connected the dots. Rebecca called my phone directly. This time, I answered. "You need to come get this stuff right now," she demanded. "It's causing a scene for everyone in the building." "I'm not responsible for abandoned property," I replied calmly. "She asked for space. I'm giving her space, all the space she needs." This is harassment. This is generosity I could have charged for storage. By nightfall, the sidewalk exhibit had drawn the attention of neighbors, passers-by, and apparently several people who knew us. My phone filled up with texts from friends who had driven by to see it for themselves. Pictures from different angles started popping up on social media, each one adding to the story. The rain started around midnight, and I briefly wondered if I should feel guilty for leaving her belongings out in the weather. Then I remembered the timestamp on that first photo with Michael, and decided that some things deserved to be rained on. Friday morning brought the real fallout. The rain had soaked several boxes, turning her carefully selected wardrobe into expensive flea market material. Her wedding dress, despite the garment bag, had a water stain on the hem that looked like a teardrop. The irony wasn't lost on me, but the weather damage was nothing compared to the social media firestorm that was raging over her carefully constructed lies. My post had gone viral within our circle. Not internet viral, but small town viral, which is infinitely more devastating. Every mutual friend, family member, and acquaintance now had front row seats to her deception. The comments section read like a real-time investigation, with people comparing timelines, sharing screenshots, and connecting dots she never intended for them to find. Her attempts at damage control only made it worse. She posted a long explanation about private matters and misunderstandings, but it rang hollow against the mountain of evidence now circulating. When you get caught in a lie, more words just create more lies to maintain. The best part was watching Michael's reaction unfold in real time. His social media activity dropped to zero after Tuesday. No more romantic posts, no more couple photos, no more declarations of happiness. Either he was smarter than I'd given him credit for, or he'd finally realized he'd been cast as the leading man in someone else's deception. By noon, I had my answer. Her car was back at the apartment building, but his was gone. The sidewalk display had been hastily cleared, showing clear signs of panic. Everything had been shoved together. Wet cardboard, ripped bags, items scattered in the rush to salvage what was left. Too little, too late. My phone was ringing constantly now. Her number, Rebecca's, even her mother calling to discuss the situation like adults. I didn't answer any of them. The time for discussion was over when she decided to use our marriage break as her relationship transition period. Instead, I spent the day documenting the aftermath, screenshots of deleted posts, cached versions of changed captions, even pictures people had sent me of the building's courtyard after her panicked cleanup. Digital forensics for the social media age. The breakthrough came when her sister called. Unlike the others, I answered. I need you to know that not all of us knew what she was planning, she said, without any preamble. When I saw those pictures with that guy, I thought you two had already been broken up for weeks. She told everyone you'd been having problems for months. Interesting, I replied. What else did she tell everyone? What followed was a 20-minute monologue of every lie she had spun to justify her actions. According to her narrative, I was emotionally absent, controlling with money, and had been the one pushing for the separation. She had painted herself as the victim of a failing marriage, finally finding the courage to choose happiness. The problem with elaborate lies is that they require everyone to play their assigned parts, and I had never auditioned for the role of the negligent husband. She's been planning this for at least 2 months, her sister continued. The thing with Rebecca, the new wardrobe, even this guy. She met him at a networking event, and they've been talking ever since. 2 months. While I was trying to fix our marriage, she was auditioning my replacement. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because what she did was wrong, and because everyone deserves to know the truth. The truth? What a concept. That night, I crafted one final social media post. Not angry, not vengeful, just factual. A simple timeline with dates, events, and publicly available evidence. Her request for a marriage break, the timeline of her social media posts, the discovery of her relationship that predated our separation by months. I ended it with a single line. Sometimes the best way to save a marriage is to find out it was already over. The response was swift and decisive. Friends who had been neutral suddenly had opinions. Family members who had stayed silent found their voices. Even former co-workers started sharing their own experiences with similar situations. But the most satisfying response came from Michael's ex-wife, who commented simply, Same playbook, different victim. Good luck. Apparently, this wasn't the first time he'd played the part of salvation for an unhappy wife. It was his specialty, and now everyone knew it. By midnight, her social media accounts had gone private. His had been deactivated entirely. The digital trail of their affair had been scrubbed, but the internet never forgets, and screenshots live forever. More importantly, the truth was out there. Not my version of the truth, not her version, but the actual documented time-stamped truth that anyone could verify for themselves. Saturday morning brought silence. No more calls, no more texts, no more frantic attempts at explanation or damage control. Just silence, and the sound of consequences finally catching up to decisions. I made coffee in my quiet kitchen and checked my phone one last time. Her latest post, visible only to close friends now, was a single sentence. Some bridges burn themselves. I couldn't have said it better myself. On Sunday afternoon, she finally came home. I heard the car door slam before I saw her, the same aggressive sound she made when she was angry about trivial things like dirty dishes or missed dinner reservations. Except now she was angry about consequences, which is different. She stood on the porch for a full minute before using her key, probably rehearsing her speech, gathering her courage, or maybe just hoping I wouldn't be there. But I was exactly where I was supposed to be, in my house, drinking my coffee, reading my book as if nothing had changed. Because for me, nothing had. I'd just stopped pretending. The door opened with theatrical slowness. She walked in as if she were walking into a trap, which wasn't entirely wrong. Every step was calculated, every movement designed to gauge my mood and adjust her approach accordingly. "We need to talk," she announced from the doorway. I didn't look up from my book. "We do. Don't be childish. This whole social media thing has gotten out of hand." Childish? An interesting choice of words from someone who documented her affair like a teenager with her first boyfriend. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," I replied, turning a page. "I thought we agreed to no contact during your reflection period." She moved closer, abandoning the careful approach for a direct confrontation. "You know exactly what I mean. Posting my belongings on the street like some kind of revenge fantasy. It's embarrassing." "For who?" "For both of us. People are talking. My family is asking questions. My friends think you've lost your mind." I finally looked up, meeting her eyes with the kind of calm that comes from holding all the cards. "Your friends think I've lost my mind for giving you exactly what you asked for. That's fascinating." She sat on the edge of the couch, keeping her distance but trying to look approachable. Classic manipulation technique, close enough to seem engaged, far enough to retreat if needed. "Look, I know this looks bad, but you don't understand the whole situation. Enlighten me." The break wasn't about him. It was about us, about figuring out what we both wanted. And yes, I met someone during that time, but it wasn't planned. I closed my book and gave her my full attention. 2 months? What? You've been talking to him for 2 months. Your sister confirmed it yesterday when she called to apologize for your behavior. The color drained from her face. She hadn't expected her own family to turn on her, hadn't calculated the cost of lies that required everyone else to lie too. My sister doesn't know what she's talking about. Your sister has screenshots, lots of them. Apparently you've been sharing details about your new relationship longer than you've been pretending our marriage had problems. She stood up, pacing now, the careful composure cracking. "This is ridiculous. I came here to have an adult conversation about moving forward, and you're throwing accusations around based on gossip." "Moving forward," I repeated. Interesting phrase. How exactly do you envision that working? "We could try therapy, work on our issues, give this a real shot instead of playing these games." There it was. The pivot. The moment the cheater becomes the victim, when their bad decisions become our issues, when their affair becomes a relationship problem that requires joint effort to solve. "What issues?" I asked. "Be specific." She launched into a prepared speech about communication problems, emotional distance, and incompatible life goals. It all sounded very reasonable, all of it completely manufactured for this moment. She'd been happy enough with our communication when she needed my help moving her things out for her 10-day escape plan. "So, let me get this straight," I interrupted. Our marriage had all these problems, but instead of discussing them with me, you discussed them with him for 2 months while you planned your exit strategy and groomed your replacement relationship. It wasn't like that. What was it like? It was complicated. Complicated, I repeated. You know what isn't complicated? Honesty, respect, basic human decency. You know what else isn't complicated? The fact that you're still wearing your wedding ring while asking me to compete for a position that's already been filled. She looked down at her hand, as if she'd forgotten the ring was there. Maybe she had. Maybe she'd worn it so long it had become invisible, just like the marriage it represented. I never wanted things to happen this way. But they did happen this way, and now you want me to pretend they didn't, so you can have your backup plan if your first choice doesn't work out. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like someone who made her decision and is now trying to avoid the consequences. She sat back down, tears starting to form. Real or acted, I couldn't tell anymore. It didn't matter either. I made a mistake, she whispered, a terrible mistake, but it doesn't have to end everything. You're right, I agreed. Your mistake doesn't have to end everything, but it ended this. I stood up, walking to the window that overlooked our driveway. Her car was parked behind mine, blocking me in. Even in defeat, she was still trying to control the situation. You need to move your car, I said without turning around. I have plans tonight. What kind of plans? I turned to face her one last time. The kind that don't require your approval, your opinion, or your presence. The kind of plans free people make. 3 months later, I ran into her at Trader Joe's. She was alone, looking smaller somehow, as if the confidence she'd borrowed from her affair had expired along with the relationship. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by practical outfits that suggested someone living on a single income. The glow from those first few social media posts had faded into something closer to regret. She saw me first, freezing in the cereal aisle as if she'd been caught shoplifting. I gave her a polite nod and kept shopping. No drama, no confrontation, no need to prove a point. The work was already done. You look good, she said as I passed her cart. I did look good. 3 months of focusing on myself instead of managing someone else's emotional chaos will do that to you. Regular workouts, better sleep, a real social life with friends who didn't require constant reassurance about their choices. Thanks, I replied, not returning the compliment because I wasn't in the business of making liars feel better about themselves. How have you been? Excellent, I said, and I meant it. You? She looked down at her cart, filled with store brands and single-serving meals. Getting by. Getting by. The phrase said everything she couldn't. Prince Charming had turned out to be a predictable disappointment. Rebecca had grown tired of providing alibis for bad decisions. The family members who had bought into her victim narrative had quietly backed away once the truth came out. Actions have consequences. They always do. I heard you're dating someone new, she said, fishing for information she had no right to ask for. I'm living my life, I corrected. That's what free people do. The divorce settlement had been finalized 2 weeks ago. Clean, simple, without any of the drama she had tried to create through her lawyer. It's hard to claim victim status when the evidence of your choices is documented across multiple social media platforms. She got to stay with Rebecca in Brooklyn. I got the house. She got her new beginning. I got my self-respect. A fair trade. I want you to know I'm sorry, she said, for how everything happened, for the timing, for the lies, for all of it. I studied her face, searching for sincerity behind the apology. I found some, mixed with self-pity, and the kind of regret that comes from facing consequences rather than feeling genuine remorse. I believe that you're sorry, I said. You're sorry it didn't work out the way you planned. I didn't mean it like that. It's what you meant 3 months ago when you thought you had a better option. Now that you don't, you regret the method, not the choice. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Good. She was finally learning when to stop talking. The thing is, I continued, I'm not sorry, not anymore. You did me a favor by showing me exactly who you were before I wasted any more years finding out the hard way. I moved past her cart toward the checkout, then stopped. By the way, your 10-day break ended up lasting exactly as long as your relationship with him. Funny how that all worked out. That night, I met my friends at the same Beverly Hills restaurant where she had posted her first picture with the replacement. Different table, different company, completely different energy. These were people who knew my value without needing constant proof, who showed up consistently without needing dramatic exits to prove their independence. "You seem different," one of them observed. "Oh, more relaxed?" "I am relaxed," I answered. "Turns out life gets easier when you stop trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed." My phone buzzed with a text from the woman I'd been seeing for the last month. Nothing dramatic, nothing demanding, just a simple, "Hope you're having a good time with your friends." The kind of message from someone who trusted me enough not to need constant updates, who respected my time and my space because she valued her own. That's what healthy people do. They communicate without drama, show interest without desperation, and build relationships instead of staging them for social media. The conversation flowed around the table, touching on work, sports, travel plans, normal topics that didn't require walking on eggshells or managing someone else's emotional temperature. This was what I had been missing during those last few months of trying to save something that was already dead. Later that night, I sat on my back deck with a beer, looking at the space where her exercise equipment used to clutter the patio. The yard looked bigger now, more organized, like everything else in my life. My phone showed 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Her, probably, trying to continue the conversation from the grocery store. I deleted the notifications without listening to the voicemails. Some conversations don't deserve to be finished. The house was quiet, but not empty. It was a silence of choice rather than abandonment. The difference between loneliness and being alone is control, choosing your own company instead of having it chosen for you. 6 months from now, she would probably try to reconnect again. Maybe around the holidays, maybe on our old anniversary, maybe just when the consequences of her choices felt too heavy to carry alone. That's what people do when they realize that burning bridges leaves you stranded on the wrong side of the river. But bridges, once burned, don't rebuild themselves. And some destinations aren't worth the return trip. I finished my beer and went inside, locking the door behind me. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities, new experiences, new people who understood that respect isn't negotiable and trust isn't renewable. Tonight, I was exactly where I belonged, in my own space, on my own terms, accountable only to someone who had earned the right to my consideration. That person was me. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us out immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.